There's a Japanese proverb that roughly translates to "a frog in a well knows nothing of the sea," to describe how a person with a limited perspective can foolishly jump into conclusions and fail to consider things beyond themselves and their surroundings. Sometimes, a person like this is convinced that they are some kind of big shot, when in fact, they really aren't. After watching episode 5, I'm sure you all can think of someone who fits this description very well. This someone, convinced that they deserve to have everything they want and seeing nothing else beyond their own importance, has foolishly let themselves be manipulated into one of the most stupid plans I've ever heard. But you see, Kaya, you're not quite the catch you think you are. Per the light novel, your talents are mediocre, your family's in decline, and judging by how you walked right into Tatsuishi's hands, you're also not the sharpest tool in the shed. And boy oh boy, your actions will end up having far-reaching consequences, as this episode's title so kindly reminds us. Small actions can ripple out and have long-standing consequences. As the Japanese saying goes, the ground hardens after it rains, and after last episode, things are going wonderfully for Mio. She has received a bunch of beautiful new kimonos, and after meeting with her old maid Hana, she also gets to have other guests over, this time being Godo, Kyoka's co-worker. When Kyoka sees Mio wearing the cherry blossom kimono he chose for her, he is enthralled by her beauty, which causes the incorrigible Godo to poke fun at him all evening long. However, despite these positive developments, trouble is brewing. First off, something is definitely wrong with Mio. Her nightmares have gone beyond just dreams of the past and have turned into horrifying visions. Kyoka happens to be around while she's asleep, and he detects magical power, which makes him, and us, wonder if perhaps Mio does have some kind of latent powers of her own. Additionally, Koji's father enlists the cooperation of the detestable Kaya in an effort to take Mio from Kyoka. It's an odd partnership, but it just so happens that their interests align. For Kaya, who is unable to bear the fact that her sister made a better match than hers, now wants to take Kyoka for herself. Their plan is far from foolproof, but they think it's the greatest one ever and execute it nevertheless. While Koji watches on in horror and angrily confronts his father. However, he's unable to stop Tatsuishi and ends up overpowered by the older man's superior strength and experience. And so, on a sunny day, while on an outing with Yurie to deliver Kyoka a bento, Mio is kidnapped, leaving behind a distressed woman who runs back to Kyoka and informs him of what happened. Just as Kyoka is wondering where Mio could be, Koji, who was freed from his bonds by his older brother, runs in and begs his help in rescuing Mio. To relieve the stress I experienced while watching the last half of this episode, I would like to recount the many times that I felt joy while watching. I felt joy when Mio received her kimonos. There were so many of them and they were all very beautiful, particularly the one with the cherry blossoms. And while I wish Kyoka had been a little bit more expressive in this scene, I knew that he was just being shy, and that also gave me joy. Much like the older ladies who know Kyoka quite well, I also couldn't suppress a little chuckle. Kyoka is the embodiment of a tsundere, acting a little grumpy when teased about being in love or acting jealously. I couldn't help but laugh during the scene where he is driving Godo to his house for the thank you dinner. I felt joy seeing Mio receive her guests like a good hostess. Not only does she look beautiful wearing her pink kimono, but her attitude has changed dramatically. She meets people's eyes, she stands confidently, and no longer carries herself like a lowly servant. The change is noticeable and welcome. Kyoka is mesmerized when he sees her and goes so far as to tell her that she looks beautiful, which of course brought me great joy. The dinner went very well. Godo was so taken with Mio that he jokingly urged her to dump Kyoka and marry him instead, which earned Kyoka's displeasure. Yes, that also brought me joy. Now, the anime does not say this at all, but in the light novel, Kyoka was very upset at Goto for having done this. However, hearing Mio turn Goto down and be very decisive about preferring Kyoka actually gave him a feeling of relief. After all, he'd harbored a nagging feeling that she might have accepted to marry pretty much anyone that would have offered her a warm home. But no, turns out that Mio wants to stay with him because of him, not solely because she's found someone who won't mistreat her. The scene where Mio and Kyoka are talking after they see Goto off also made me feel fluffy and happy. There's something so sweet about how he places his hand on her head. It's not too intimate a touch, but it is very gentle and conveys so much tenderness. And there's more. While I wasn't entirely joyful during the scene where Mio is having her nightmares, when Kyoka wakes her, it was a very heartwarming scene. I love how he holds her trembling hand and comforts her, telling her that she is not alone. These two are just so sweet that I'm going to develop cavities if I continue watching this show. I felt joyful and a little jealous that Mio gets to make Kyoka homemade lunches and that she gets to go into town wearing her pretty new clothes. That blue ensemble with the matching little purse, adorable. It's light and summery and it brings me, that's right, great joy. I also felt the special kind of petty joy when I saw Kaya realize that her sister, whom she'd hated and trampled on for so long, actually has it better than she does. Kaya, no matter what you do, Mia will always be far happier than you ever will be. However, the joy stopped there because obviously there's nothing joyful about kidnapping a person. Because I choose happiness today, I choose not to give these morons any more screen time than necessary. So rather than try to pick apart their stupid plan, I'll just jump on ahead to list some of the things that were skipped from the light novel or that were different in the anime. The scene where Mio received the kimonos was an anime original, and I thought it was a good way to start off the episode. The anime also skipped entirely the conversation about the nature of grotesqueries while Kyoka was driving Goto to his house. It's interesting that they point out that with the increase of science and technology, people in general have become less superstitious, and by not attributing strange phenomena or the unknown to the work of monsters and such, this has caused the grotesqueries to lose their power and decrease in number. However, in the same way, those that are gifted are not as powerful as they had been in previous generations, as the gifted had become increasingly complacent and haven't really honed their skills. I don't know, this just sounds like a pretty big problem, maybe something that might even be revisited in a future volume. The scene where Mio has a nightmare after the dinner with Goto was heavily abbreviated in the anime, though I must say it was still pretty well done. But it's still a shame that they cut out some really important lines. But never fear, your Magpi is here to rectify the situation. The main difference in this scene is that while Mio is crying in her sleep, in the anime she's not as emotional as she was in the light novel or the manga. In the manga, the moment she wakes up and realizes she was having a nightmare, she bursts into tears and begins to sob. Kyoka holds her in his arms and tells her to cry it all out, encouraging her to lean on him. After all, isn't that what a husband and a wife do for one another? At this, Mio slowly and haltingly begins to tell him what she saw in her nightmares and asks once more to never have to leave his side. He assures her that only death will ever separate them, giving her great peace of mind. It's sad that Mio has these kinds of scars, but it is important that Kyoka learns the extent of how much trauma she is carrying around, and he is more than willing to help in whatever way he can. Finally, there's an extra side story in Volume 2 of the manga from Goto's point of view, which takes place during his dinner at Kyoka's house. Believe it or not, the happy-go-lucky Goto had an ulterior motive for accepting the invitation. despite his cheerful countenance. All that time he'd been observing Mio to make sure that his beloved commander wasn't being taken in by some girl who might harm him in the future. After all, let us remember that Kyoka is inexperienced in romance and relationships, so Goro took it upon himself to make sure Mio was the real deal. In the end, he felt like a total ass for suspecting her, and was satisfied with what he saw. In fact, he ended up admiring her and seeing just what it was that Kyoka liked about her. While we didn't get this little short story in the animation, it is still entirely evident that things between Kyoka and Mio are going great, and that they are great for each other. Just like the Japanese saying, love and a cough cannot be hidden. In the same way, while they express their feelings in an understated way, the two are obviously falling in love, and everyone around them can see it. You can tell by how Kyoka acts, all jealous, and how he is not hesitant to be sweet and caring with Mio. While for Mio, the way she glows and radiates happiness whenever she thinks or does something for Kyoka is evidence enough that she also has feelings for him. It's a shame that some idiots are trying to get in their way, but I am absolutely certain that nothing will succeed in keeping them apart. You guys, I can't wait for next week's episode. Kyoka, go get your girl and fight for the one you love. What were your impressions of this episode? How do you think the Kyoka and Koji partnership will work out in the end? Where do you think they took Mio to? What are some of the things that were in the light novel that I didn't cover in this video? Remember, light novel readers, no spoilers in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. If you liked this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Until next time, bye bye.